Hello and welcome to our channel MarshStream, your public performance broadcast platform. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. You can also donate to our tip jar and support the arts and artists of MarshStream by clicking the link below in the description. Check out our website at themarsh.org for all upcoming live performances. Now enjoy the show.
Others. Welcome, 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 Hai-Ting and Jennifer.
Hi.
Hello.
So glad to have you here.
So happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
Same, same.
So this is about Astronautica. So Hai-Ting, tell us first, what is this Astronautica and how did it come to be and who are the people singing it?
Astronautica is a concert for women's trio. The trio is myself and soprano Lindsay Kesselman and contralto Kirsten Solik, and we call ourselves Trio Triumphatrix. And we had an idea a couple of years ago, in the before times, to commission women to write us songs for our three women's voices using the words of women astronauts. So women who have traveled into space, of which there are by now, I think 72 women over history, something like that. The numbers have changed a bit, actually, the numbers have gone up since we started the show. And Jolley is one of the fantastic women who we commissioned to take some words of a woman astronaut talking about the view from space, or the experience of working as an astronaut, or the experience of being in space, or the perspective shift that happens when you travel outside the Earth's atmosphere, or whatever inspired her. And I think she'll talk about specifically the text that she ended up choosing. And then, so we planned to do this concert in May 2020 with some nice atmospheric video accompaniment using NASA images. And of course, that plan was scuttled. And instead, we turned it into the digital product that you will see over the weekend if you join us for the full show, and you'll see an excerpt tonight. So we got together in a quarantine pod. We all got tested, and all three of us and a couple of our partners in our pods got tested and went for a week-long retreat in the country and recorded and videoed all the music and a lot of footage using just the technological skills that we acquired rapidly just for this moment in time. And then I took all the footage home and taught myself Final Cut Pro and made this visual album out of all the footage and a whole lot of beautiful footage from NASA. And that is the current incarnation of Astronautica, Voices of Women in Space. But we are very much hoping that venues will be able to do a live version as things are opening up.
Well, I think this would be a great time to put the trailer on. So, wonderful producer Brian Williamson, will you cue up the trailer or whatever you do?
This was inspired by hearing some things that astronauts were saying about looking back on Earth, looking at Earth from outside, which is a perspective that so few members of humanity have had. And I was listening to some podcasts where astronauts were talking about the amazing views and the amazing shift in perspective and all the work that they're doing in space. I thought that a lot of it was very kind of poetically inspiring, despite the fact that it's scientific or just kind of workaday talk for them. and I really wanted to hear it as music.
Well, that is beautiful, Hai-Ting and Jennifer. Um, you certainly learned that Final Cut Pro pretty well, Hai-Ting.
Well, I had nothing else to do. I spent so many hours in front of my computer, but genuinely, it both drove me insane and kept me sane because everything that I had to do for the entire year had been canceled.
But all these images and stuff, I mean, have you had a lot of image stuff before this, Miss Composer? I mean, Miss Singer, I should say? Mezzo-Soprano?
I mean, I always think about visual imagery, but no, I mean, I've never, I know I've never thought about things in this particular way before, but I had been thinking already about, I had been looking at atmospheric videos that were going to be projected behind us live that someone else was working on, and I had many opinions about them. And due to budgetary things, it wasn't going to work out for him to just be hired as a professional to make what we wanted. And so I thought, I have nothing but time. Let me just take it on and see if I can do it.
And it seems like there's ecological reasons for doing this.
There's certainly.
Could you talk a little bit about that? And Jennifer, we're getting to you.
Oh, y'all are fine.
There certainly ended up being an ecological message to it, and it's something that's hopefully on all of our minds at the moment. One of the things that so many of the astronauts say is that once they get above the Earth, they are really struck by how narrow and fragile the atmosphere is and how easily it could just evaporate and we'd have no more life on Earth. If we do the wrong thing, we could turn ourselves into Venus, which became uninhabitable because of a greenhouse effect. And that could happen to us if we do the wrong thing. So it's something that a lot of them brought up, and it's something that has been on all of our minds, and it's something that resonated with a lot of the composers. and then it's in a lot of images are available about it, and NASA does quite a few climate change informational videos, and they're doing many different studies, both from space and from the ground, looking at human effects on climate change and what we might do about it and what its pace is, and trying to model what is going to happen if we continue as we are, and whether we, they are really looking at all the details from all kinds of angles. They're not just shooting people into space on rockets. NASA is doing all kinds of work that benefits us here on Earth immensely, and that was actually one of the messages that the astronauts reiterated.
And I suppose this is something you didn't know before. Is this true?
I absolutely didn't know the extent of it, but it was one of the things that got me interested in it. The woman whose words first sparked this idea was Catherine Sullivan, who, after being an astronaut, became the director of NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and did a lot of work bringing climate change into the public consciousness.
So let's move now to the composers. Tell us about the composers, but finish with Jennifer. I mean, in general. I'm conducting this, Hai-Ting.
There are 8 composers. Let's see. Renee Favansi, Gilda Lyons, Elaine Lachika, Kamala Sankaram. Oh, this is going to end in disaster. Rashonda Reeves, Jen Jolley, and myself. I wrote some silly things to lighten the mood along the way. So hopefully a fairly diverse group of people. Jen Jolley and I are both Hapa, which woohoo! For those who don't know what Hapa is, we are half Asian, half white, and it's kind of very exciting to meet and work with other Hapa, because we are a small, though growing, non-tribe.
Agreed. I got stupid happy when I kind of figured it out. I was like, she's like me, racially speaking, mostly, except she's Hai-Ting is half Chinese and I'm half Korean, so a little different, but similarly East Asian.
And similarly oddly situated in the racial dynamics of America. We wear our race on our face and are perceived as somehow foreign, but are only half of our heritage is like that, and we know more or less about the Asian side of our heritage, and we're caught between worlds a lot of times. Jen, do you feel like that informs your worldview and the politics of your writing?
Oh yeah, it definitely influences my worldview. As to politics of my writing, there's this big thing in new music of appropriation and figuring out how to get different voices in music, and I would have to say that when I was younger, I didn't feel comfortable incorporating, let's say, Korean influences in my music, just because, I have a white sounding name, and, unless people have experienced or have met people who are, Hapa like us, they just see me as white. So I guess the term is white passing. And so I was like, well, I definitely had a Korean mother. I definitely know that culture. I definitely think... I got not Cooks Illustrated, Milk Street, the Christopher Kimball magazine, and they did a thing on Korean food. I'm thinking I finally have recipes of my favorite foods, because I'm half white and my mom's like, just watch me, just put it in. And I was remembering a time when I was in kindergarten and they're like, what's your favorite food? And I was like, spinach, because my mom would make the namul, the banchan that would be with it, and would actually add tasty things like sesame seed oil. And they're like, you crazy. So Yeah, I always felt like I was in between. I remember actually when I was in kindergarten, like I didn't know the secondary holidays, so I didn't know about St. Patrick's Day. I didn't know about Valentine's Day. It was kind of like a weird, awkward thing for me. But then fast forward to now, I was commissioned to write a piece for the American Bandmasters Association, and I decided to write a march with quotation marks. And I think I was like, I have the freedom to like interweave these tunes that I just didn't feel comfortable enough doing. Although there's this very, very famous piece called Variations on a Korean Folk Tune, and some white guy did it on Are Young. And I'm like, well, I think I'm more Korean than that guy was. So it's definitely had me look at different points of view, especially when it comes to, let's say, immigration. And like my mom was an immigrant. I vaguely remember her naturalization ceremony, and I definitely, like, as a child, I was like, why are we saying the Pledge of Allegiance? We're not in preschool, because I thought this was a preschool thing. You go to preschool, you sit in your square, you sit cross-legged, and you stand up and you say the Pledge of Allegiance. I was very confused when my mom was saying the Pledge of Allegiance, and my dad's like, your mom's becoming a citizen. And like I was like, what? I don't care. Like, she's mom. So yeah, I would have to say that it's starting to influence my music. I'm starting to realize kind of like the culture of actually learning Western music, because Western music was introduced to China, Japan, and Korea through imperialist means, and also through religion. So it's been a fascinating deep dive, and I'm looking forward to having that included more in my research and my music in the future.
Yes. My husband's a Hapa too.
Awesome.
Japanese, Italian American.
Fantastic.
Cool.
So just a little bit more before we leave the composers, Hai-Ting, and get to the specific composer. You chose women, and why? It's all about women, this piece. It's about women composers and women astronauts, right?
It is, but at the same time, it's mostly just about astronauts, and they happen to be women, which corresponds closely to something that the women astronauts say over and over again, being women in a still male-dominated field, but especially when there began to be women especially in NASA's astronaut program, it was heavily male-dominated and very macho. But from the very start, NASA made a big effort to integrate women into their program in as comfortable a way as they could. They used, for instance, psychological studies about the comfort level of minorities and how you have to have a critical mass of a same identified minority in order for them to feel comfortable speaking out and expressing their identity within the majority culture. So they deliberately, when they accepted the first six women, they carefully chose 6 out of the class of 20, I think it was, to be a certain percentage, so that they would have a cohort that would make them feel comfortable. And they did their best. I mean, it was a even more sexist culture than we're living in now. But a lot of those early astronauts said that the most trouble they had was from the press, from the outside, and from the public, who would just constantly be asking them questions about being women in space. And they'd be like, what? We're astronauts. We're just doing our job. We are. I don't know if we're gonna wear makeup in space. I don't care. I don't want to think about those things. I want to train to be an astronaut like everyone else. But if you go back and watch TV interviews, there are amazing interviews, even with some of the big TV anchors, where they're just asking these women the most inane questions about being a woman in this program, and they're trying to give they're just trying to deflect and give interesting answers. And then you see, for instance, when there was the first all-woman spacewalk, which happened during 2020, once again, the press just wanted to ask them about being women, and they were like, it's just another spacewalk. One of us has already spacewalked. We are doing this incredibly detailed work that we've trained so heavily for. We're concentrating on all these tasks. It's incredibly demanding. And we're not thinking about being women out there. We're just thinking about getting the right wrench on the right bit of the space station, so with our huge gloves on, so that the whole thing doesn't fall apart and kill us all. I'm imagining what they're actually thinking, because they were much more polite than that. They were really like professional and articulate about it. So in a way, I kind of wanted to reflect this whole idea. Like, yeah, I just happened to choose all women because there were a bunch of women who said cool things. And, our trio happened to be a bunch of women, so why don't we use the words of people that we identify with? And weirdly, I also, when I started looking into setting the words of astronauts, everything that the astronauts say, every picture that's taken of them while they're in NASA's employ, all of it is in public domain, which is an amazing thing that NASA does. We pay for it as taxpayers, and then it belongs to us. And it's for all of us. And I started looking at the utterances of astronauts, and there are so many amazing ones that, many people know Chris Hadfield, who's a Canadian astronaut, is just like the most poetic guy ever. There's a Japanese man who, his Twitter feed is like little haikus from space. It's so beautiful. There are a lot of very beautifully articulate astronauts who happen to be men, but there's just so much material. And I thought, well, how am I going to limit this? If I just limit it to women, there'll be a somewhat more manageable pile of poetry and tech speak for me to dig through. And also, it was, I don't know if it was the year of Me Too, but that washed over us, and I was ready to amplify the voices of women doing important work that they are doing because they want to do it and they're really good at it. And I wanted to honor that.
So when we say you spearheaded it, did you actually do the libretto? How did it come to, how was that working, and how did you work with the composers on this?
I spearheaded the libretto. I collected piles and piles of texts, and I transcribed videos, and I curated things that I thought might work with music. But then as we found the composers, and we kind of compiled a list, the three of us, Lindsay and Kirsten and I, compiled a list of our favorite women composers, and kind of saw where they matched up and talked about a good mix, and looked to get some diversity of age and race and location. I took that huge pile of text that I had, that I was compiling on my computer, and I kind of sorted it by things that I thought might go with the voices of. Sorry, my cat wants to weigh in. Might want to go with might go with the musical language of these various composers, and I sent each composer like between 6 and 12 texts, and asked them if any of these inspired them, or if they wanted to see something else, if they wanted to. Some of them wanted to compile their own libretto and would ask me for other things, or would take the things that I had given and turn them into little collages of poetry. Or like I'll let let Jen say what happened between us, which was extremely fruitful.
So
Yeah,
Jen,
I will.
like to
Oh,
say this now? Yes, yes.
yeah, sure. So I remember getting an email from Hai-Ting about, I want to say maybe late July of 2019. I was working at Interlochen, and I thought it was such a cool project, and just really thankful to be a part of this larger idea. And I remember that Hai-Ting did send me about 6 to 10 compiled, I guess, astronaut poems, and she libretticized them, which was great because sometimes spoken text doesn't work so well as sung text, as I actually tell my students. So I'm really glad she did that. There are some texts I thought were really cool, having to do with women's work and women's labor, which I found very fascinating. I ended up not doing those texts just because I wasn't quite hearing anything lyrical, and I wanted to write something lyrical, something that fit the voice really well, and something that I realized is that as a composer who used to sing in a lot of choir and maybe took voice lessons once upon a time, I would like to write stuff that I would like to sing myself, albeit not very well. But I'm sure with practice, and if I could get my ribs to to expand there, it would totally work. So I settled on a text by Heide-Marie Steffensen Piper, and I liked it, but I remember there was just a lot of technical jargon in there, and I know that Hai-Ting already took out a ton of this technical jargon, but there were still some, let's just say, 4-syllable words, and yikes, it's just hard, I want to honor what the astronauts do and they've done. As a composer, I kind of feel the same way. Like, I'm a composer. Like, I kind of make jokes about well, I do this way because I'm a composer. I like controlling things, probably a little bit too much, but I happen to identify as a woman, happen to identify as Hapa. I like wearing makeup. I can in my job, I suppose, but it's irrelevant. I just want to focus on the music, and probably I think what would be relevant is kind of my own personal experience about it. So, anyways,
Jen,
go ahead.
Jen, so tell us. You just said this person's name. Maybe you could type it.
Oh goodness.
In, or don't do it if it's going to take too long. But this
It's in the video of
Yeah.
Jen's piece. You'll see it written out.
But this Haydn, what's the first name?
Heide-Marie Steffensen Piper.
Okay, but Heide-Marie is an astronaut.
Heide-Marie is an
Heide-Marie,
astronaut. Yeah,
yes.
she was an astronaut.
She was one. She's retired.
Yeah.
Now, as whatever. I think we had a conversation earlier. I was like, what does a retired astronaut do? Well, I think Hai-Ting, you mentioned one of them now works for, doing research about ecology and whatnot. I'm actually not sure what Heide-Marie does right now, but definitely gives talks and whatnot, and has done some, musical. I wouldn't say musical things, but I know that I have a friend of a friend in Seattle who had her speak about, her life as an astronaut as part of this concert. So I have to say, one thing that I really liked about the text that I chose was that Heide-Marie said that it's kind of a funny line. She noticed that when she was floating around in space and she saw our planet, that she's not as good in geography as she thought she was. And I felt I think I'd like to say I'm an American. I have American levels of geography. Probably not so much the physical attributes, but I guess if you're an astronaut and you're looking at the Earth, you don't have lines and borders. You have to be okay, that's a mountain range, and this is the other part of North America. You see that little strip there, and try to figure it out. I have to say, Hai-Ting, one thing I really liked about the video that you compiled is that you labeled where we were at. I was like, yay.
Yeah, I didn't do that. That's from NASA.
Oh, good for them.
Yeah,
Okay, great.
It's part of the they have 6 hours of the entire traveling around the entire globe, and they put little. You'll see in the video. They put little labels to tell you where you are as you go by landmarks. And it's completely fascinating because it's really hard to do.
Yeah,
It's
I
really
was,
hard to know.
I have to say, I don't think I'll ever travel in space in my life. I will certainly admire all astronauts for the bravery and the immense like skill and work that they do for us. But yeah, I thought that that was a time where I've like, if I were floating in space, I would also have a hard time identifying stuff. And, I thought that that line kind of humanized her a little bit. She's doing something that's so incredible that, let's be real, not very many humans get to do. Not very many humans get to see outer space. Not very many humans get to do spacewalks or go to the International Space Station. And I just thought this is something, probably like the one thing I might be able to relate with her. And I thought it was kind of a funny line that kind of brought out the depth and the awe and the amazement that came from this experience in this text. So I think ultimately that's why I chose it. But anyways, back to Hai-Ting.
Oh, wait, you said you chose it. How? It wasn't something that Hai-Ting gave you. How did you choose it? Where did you find it?
Oh, actually, she did give it to me. She gave me like 6 to 12 poems. I don't remember how many, but there were quite a few. Like some of them were tiny snippets, some of them were bigger. And she picked some texts that would fit to the composer, which I didn't know at the time. I thought that maybe this was it. So I was like, all right, well, I'm going to hurry up and pick something. But
Oh no,
um,
yeah. I mean, I didn't know you or your music before all of this. Lindsay Kesselman recommended you, and listened to some. I listened to some of your music online, and I thought about all the texts that I had, and sent you some that I thought you might like. And you mentioned that I libretticized Hedda Marie's speech there, which is from an interview, I believe.
yes.
And I transcribed the interview, and I sent you the whole thing in this sort of raw rough draft list of things that I asked you to choose from, and you said, I like this one, but I feel like it needs to be pared down a little bit. And then I think I did four different versions for
Hmm.
you because I didn't know quite what you want. I did one that was like almost all technical jargon that was like just leaned into those
Yeah. And I
four
was like,
syllable words. And
oh
then I
man.
did one that was like more about one that was more about the experience of being in a spacewalker. And then I did one that was kind of these funny utterances, including I'm not as good in geography as I thought. And then she also says, wow, that
Yeah.
you took in this beautiful way. And
Yeah,
she like quotes herself as she's thinking in outer space. And it was a really interesting way of looking at it.
yeah, I think what I liked about the wows, which yes, I did bring out a lot, was again, I just thought that that might be my reaction. Again, we'll
Yes.
never probably be in space. I am not qualified to be in space. But I just thought it just humanized her into like something that, all of us could probably relate to. Like we're not as good at geography as we thought, and wow, this is such a beautiful sight. I mean,
Yeah.
even just seeing the videos, I'm just inspired by that, and I'm not even the one seeing it in real time. So yeah, I ended up picking that one. I remember one version you had took out all the quotes, and I'm like, oh, but it's like her talking about her experience. And but let me tell you, Hai-Ting, I very much appreciated that you took that time, because I actually have been talking about this piece to young composers, and they're like, how do you find text and everything? And I'm like, look, it's a process. And you have to think about how long the lines are. A breath contains one line and one idea. And I said that maybe you might like the technical jargon. That's fine. I just know that I like, it's hard for me. I have to admit. So but that we had this process, and I felt like you being a singer, and that you've like kind of done this before, I think is very helpful too. That you can, like, even though you weren't composing the specific text that I worked on, you still had like a musical ear. You still knew, like, how long it could all last, how long it, like, the vowels could work. I'm assuming, or I'm assuming that you did speak through it, or maybe sing-ish through it. So it was, but at least
I was trying not to.
speaking's important.
I was trying to walk the line of not doing composers' jobs for them or not trying to influence them, but also giving them something that I could at least imagine being sung in some way. But it's so interesting how I mean, it's wonderful and human how everyone has a different rhythm of composing it, and everyone's idea of, I mean, even that thing that you just said about the that each breath has to be one idea, it comes across so beautifully in your music, even though it's long and drawn out. But then other people don't stick to that, and they'll like fragment things until they just become textural, and they won't even, the point won't be even to get across an idea in text, or somebody else will have us repeat one little thing over and over and over again so that you can get it even though it's maybe too long, or layer things on top of each other so you can't possibly understand them even if you want to, and they just become like instrumental texturing.
Yeah, there are a whole bunch of different ways, and every composer's different, and even there's intention behind that. So
Yeah.
I personally thought that these words are very important, and again, I just wanted that being able to not like think about time, but just be in this like space-time continuum. Again, I'm not a physicist, like no one quote me, even though we're recording this, but just this timelessness. Ironically, dealing with a medium that has to do with time. So now, when you're talking about layers and not interpreting it, one of these days I want to write a requiem where I'm just going to fragment the crap out of it, because that would be my intention. I know. We'll see.
Nice.
We'll see. If I get to that.
I want to sing that. I also felt that it was very clear when I got your piece that you sing, because it was so not just singable, because obviously they're all singable because we sang them, but it just felt comfortable, and like somebody who that the person who wrote this probably sang it, which is not always true even with some great composers.
I probably sang some things down an octave to myself. I'm sure my cats were like, "What are you doing with your voice?" And I'm like,
Well,
yeah,
you may have noticed that that's we too sang a couple things down the octave.
I liked it though. I liked it. Actually, I needed to go. I need to go back in the score and fix it, or I don't remember if I have. I have kind of a backlog. COVID was it was a time. My composer brain was like all over the place. But no, I actually liked that. I was like, wait, that's down an octave. Yes. Awesome.
Well,
so,
I mean, our contralto, our bottom voice, Kirsten Solik, just has a ridiculously low, amazing, rich voice. So I feel like in another trio, it could easily work up the octave, but she was just like, this is what I'm going to say.
Yeah,
So we were like, yeah,
I have to admit, when I was stalking your trio, I was like, oh my God, that's a real contralto.
It's amazing.
None of this, like when you're in college, there are young voices, even in graduate school, and they'll have somebody play a contralto, and I'm like, okay. And again, to give my friends credit who've like played those roles in the past, like a real contralto voice is so rare, and y'all have one, and it's delicious. I love it so much. So thank you for taking it down an octave.
So how about we listen to it now? We heard a little bit of it in the trailer, but we're going to hear the whole section right now.
Excellent.
Fantastic.
And I think that's good. You can stop motion. Hey, motion stopped. You're going to pull the ingress thing out.
Robotic arm operator continues to move Heidi's definition Piper away from the...
Heidi, we're ramping out. Okay.
get done. And I went about my tasks. And I was ahead. So I thought, okay, I can take a breather here.
Wow, that is so, so, so beautiful. Jennifer and Hai-Ting, beautiful. Jen? Where is Jen? What has happened to Jen?
We've lost her in space.
There she is. So you talked a little
There
bit
we are.
about the words. We've talked about the words. Tell us a little bit about your composing process.
Yeah, so as I sometimes tend to do, wanted to make things even more complicated. I got the idea to write something kind of like ethereal and in the cosmos, and I was thinking specifically, I was writing for treble voices, specifically trios, and I do remember learning about medieval motets. And I love them. I thought that, this is, again, something I would like to sing. And also the words are clear, but also sometimes not. So I'm specifically thinking of motets that are based on what were called like little snippets of chant, clausulae. And I remember learning about this as an undergrad. You'd have the vernacular language French, and then you'd also have Latin, and they're kind of layered because you'd still have like that tiny bit of chant that was, based this, I wouldn't say like a pop tune, but again, it's a popular secular motet. And so when I first started, I'm like, maybe I can like look at some like melodic ideas from Hildegard and then like put that in there and see if she's written anything about the cosmos. And so I started listening to a lot of Hildegard, as inspiration for this piece. And I tried incorporating a couple of chants. It was not working, so I disbanded that. But kind of the ideas seemed the same, where it's like I was going to tell this story through three voices in a very like a contrapuntal but like understood way, where just to reflect the heavens, quite literally, actually, the heavens and the cosmos and the awe, and especially the wow aspect of it that the Heide-Marie literally said in her interview when she was quoting herself. That's what I ended up listening to, was a lot of Hildegard, some motet-y things, and also Bulgarian women's chorus, just because I really like the fiery nature of that type of singing. And I was just hoping that as a composer, I go on these like research listening things just because I want to get inspired and have ideas. And then I stop listening because I don't want to sound like anything else, although I think we all sound like, something else. It's our style that kind of filters it. So that's kind of what I was thinking about. I was thinking of like a chant-like melody, following this narration that keeps the motion going until she's suspended in space, until she's ahead on her work, and then she's able to take a pause and see the planet and just look at it and saying, that's home, that's our planet right there. So that's kind of what I was thinking. So no quotes of Hildegard in there, promise.
So when you write, did you write 3 lines, one for each of the singer, or how do you do that?
So I actually, because I wanted some repetition in the text and wanted, to start with a singular voice. I think sometimes I start with Hai-Ting, sometimes I start with the soprano. I wanted to make sure there was like equanimity actually in writing this. I actually think of the individual line first. So I take the text and then I would like hum out or kind of sing what would be potentially a line for the I guess the initial melody. And then once I have that, then I can kind of interweave through counterpoint other voices and whatnot. This gives me a better sense of timing too, because having that singular voice and something that I would try to sing back, I could figure out like when would be a great opportunity to take breaths, when would be a good opportunity to trade off lines. And then I get to kind of figure out what the collective harmonies would be from the individual lines that are similar but different, if that is making any sense to you or the viewers right now. But specifically for vocal stuff, unless it's like homogeneous at the same time, I think like, all right, I gotta sing this. I have to sing these lines. especially because I know that one of the things I need to work on is actually scansion. I think I'm better at it now, but when I was a younger composer, I'd actually look up the syllabification of words. I would also look at which ones stress. I'd also say the line. I'd figure out how many syllables are in a line and see if I can, like, if there's an opportunity to have a melisma or if it needs to keep the motion going. And so I think that's my personal approach to vocal music, just because I really wanted the listener to understand everything. But I am very thankful that Hai-Ting captioned all the words in there. It's certainly helpful.
For non-musicians in the audience, a melisma is when you extend a single syllable over more than one note. So instead of just going Jennifer, you go Jennifer.
Yes, you got all fancy.
Except that that's terrible scansion because you would never emphasize that middle syllable ever.
So almost to the end of our show tonight.
Wow.
Hai-Ting, I wanted to say now, could you talk a little bit about what it was like to sing Jennifer's composition?
Oh, it was delightful. I hope that what it was like comes across in the recording that we made. I hope that sings for itself. I'm really, really delighted to have met Jen through this process, and I think that we will be working together in the future, definitely as librettist and composer, and hopefully also as singer and composer, because it was truly a delight to sing her music, and then I got to listen to it over and over and over and over and over and over again as I was teaching myself Final Cut Pro.
It was I'm thrilled we got to meet. I'm glad that Lindsay put my name forward. And fun fact, we actually haven't met in person, and we were supposed to.
No, we haven't.
We were supposed to at the premiere. I was very much looking forward to it, but it's been such a joy working with Hai-Ting, I have to say. So we will be working together in the future for sure.
Well, we sure like it at MarshStream. Thank you both so much for being part of this. And
thank you.
And everyone watch this show this weekend. You can see the full show with how many composers are there? Hai-Ting?
8 composers.
7 plus Jennifer are composed the pieces. So looking forward to Astronautica this weekend.
Bora Yoon. That's the last.
Yes.
I knew I left out somebody.
That's why you were looking.
Oh, I was really getting panicked. I wasn't prepared to list them off all, and I didn't want to leave anybody behind. So,
well, you got it, and you gave her good presents by bringing it up like that. So thank you very much. Totally enjoyed this. Learned things about composition and putting shows together, and I hope maybe you'll come do it on the Marsh stage someday.
Oh, that would be a dream.
I would fly out.
Yes,
We'll definitely go.
Oh, we'll have to do it, because then I'll get to see you both in person.
In person.
In our last 20 seconds, we are working on a live performance in New York that will replace the premiere that we were supposed to have in 2020, and hoping for October of 2021. So if you're in the New York area, hopefully that will happen. And then hopefully at some point after that in San Francisco.
Woohoo!